with a lot of good information today. Just before we get started though, a few housekeeping pieces. Everyone is muted, but we do encourage you to share your thoughts and questions in the chat. We have a team here from the office that'll be monitoring the chat, and we'll be able to respond to everything that we're able to as we go through the session this afternoon. And then we'll also be planning to update the FAQs based on the questions that we get today. So something that we want to keep making sure that information that we put out on the website is helpful and everything that you ever wanted to know. All right. So here's our agenda. We will be covering the post-award process. So we've had a lot of questions about where we're at within the post-award grant agreement process. So the goal is to help you clarify where we're at with that today and know what to expect next. Yes, Wendy, your hand is raised.
The agenda's not showing right now, Kim.
So the slides are no longer showing? Okay.
Yep, it's just saying your name.
How about now?
It's a blank screen. Oh, now it's there. There you go.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. Hopefully we don't keep having those challenges. But this is our agenda, as I was mentioning. We'll first start with the post-award process, and then we'll dive into a lot of the FAQs that we've been receiving for the last couple months and just go over what we've been able to add to the website. And then Wendy is with us from the licensing team, so she'll take us through the on-site child care regulatory requirements as part of receiving the grant funds. And then we'll talk about the various pathways that you have for support as we move forward. So first up, for the post-award process, this is kind of a series of where we've been and where we're going. So in terms of the awardees for the employer-sponsored fund, we did officially announce the round one awardees at the end of December. So that was posted. It was released from the governor's office. So that is where that news release is at, with a list of all the awardees. And then the round two awardees were announced on January the 31st. So again, that was also a news release from the governor's office. You'll find that over there on that website, again, with the list of all round one and round two awardees. So if you missed that, please check those out. And we always encourage, if this did not get any attention from your local press and media, we always encourage folks to make sure you can still share this information, because I know that both of these came at times that were very busy. And so some of the media, it was picked up in some parts of the state, but in some parts it was not. So always feel free to check those out on the governor's news release site, and feel free to share those as you see fit. After awardees were announced for both of those rounds, and we went through a great deal of data collection where we reached out to all awardees to collect the various different kind of information. We appreciate everyone's response to that, as we had to reach out several different times. But then we also got the grant agreement out for review. So to date, everyone has signed off on that grant agreement. And hopefully within that grant agreement, you were able to see the requirements that you have to meet to be able to receive the funds. So that'll be something, again, as we dive into the regulatory requirement for on-site child care awardees, we hope to provide some clarity on that this afternoon as we're together. And then we also provided the list of folks that we're going to either expand childcare or set up new childcare, and we're going to be providing care for younger ages. We provided a list of those names to our state fire marshal office for them to complete visits. So some of those visits have taken place. Some of those will happen in the future. That is something to be aware of. We'll talk a little bit about that requirement today as we go forward in the webinar. But they will leave you with a report when they do come on site. They'll also share that information with the office, and that'll help you understand from the state fire marshal and DHS perspective what you would need to do to be in compliance with those health and safety requirements. So we'll revisit that in a little bit. After all of this work has been done and you've received that visit from the state fire marshal, you will be getting that final grant agreement to sign through DocuSign. That's all going to the contact that you provided in the data collection efforts that we had. When that grant agreement has been fully executed, that is what will then trigger a claims form to be sent to the claims contact that you provided. And that ultimately is the form that you will begin submitting monthly to be reimbursed for the grant funding that you receive. So the claims form will be a big next step. After you do have an executed grant agreement, we will also be providing you with some information about the quarterly reporting. So there is another piece for reporting out every 3 months for how you spent those funds. It's a very simple report that'll take place within the grant portal. And again, more information will be going out to awardees once we have executed grant agreements in place, so you know what's expected from you in the reporting perspective. So big things to come as we think about the grant agreement finally being executed. We do expect that to take several more weeks as it's working through the different levels of approval and review within the state. But we do hope that that is completed by the time we get through April. So just a few more weeks above us to get through all of those steps. All right, so now we're going to go through a few FAQs that again are on the website for the Employer Sponsored Fund website. So you'll see the link to the FAQ section in the chat, and everything here has been added. And again, based on all what additional questions you lift up, we will be happy to add additionals. So the first one is, what are the claims and payment process? So again, once the grant agreement has been fully executed, the state's claims team will be providing you with a claims form. And again, that claims form will be what you use to submit claims for your payment reimbursement based on the terms within the grant agreement and the budget that you were provided. This form that you receive will also include guidance on how you need to submit for payment, along with how you can request that initial payment. You could request up to 30% in the application, and you can receive that within your first claims form that you submit. Again, all of that will be within the claims form, and you'll be able to start claiming that after you have an executed grant agreement. All right, next question, when will I receive initial payment? So grantees shall be required to submit a finalized implementation plan to OECOSL. When the finalized implementation plan is approved by OECOSL, the grantee may be compensated at the time of receipt for that approved implementation plan, and that up to 40% that you could request. One note about that implementation plan, you all provided that within your application. So that has already been submitted. There was a question within the application where you essentially built out your plan for implementation, and that is what we're using as the implementation plan requirement here. So please, nothing additional to do here. We'll be using that plan in the application to satisfy that requirement, right? So back to that claim being submitted, initial payments will be processed within the first claim after that is submitted once you receive it. And then typically payments are received within 60 days. That hopefully gives some clarity for what to expect and how soon payments would start being received. Next question, what happens after I have reviewed and confirmed the grant agreement and budget? Because you all have done that so far. So again, that grant agreement and budget that you signed off on will be processed by our state's contracts team. That's already occurring right now. During this process, the grant agreement will undergo multiple levels of review and approval cycle. So that's what takes the longer time frame that we're working through right now. Once that grant agreement has been approved by all required reviewers, the individual that you previously indicated as the signer within the first form that we sent you will receive a notification to complete the signature via DocuSign. That individual is the only one that'll get that, but you all indicated who that is previously. If you ever have any questions about who that is so that you know kind of who will be receiving that, always feel free to reach out to OECOSL director at fssa.in.gov. We'd always be happy to remind you who is that point person for that critical step. Next question, when can I start spending the funds? So you can start spending the funds once you receive notification that the grant agreement is fully executed. So it does have to get through that fully executed status before you have total autonomy to go spending the funds. And then ultimately, again, you will be able to claim anything that then you've spent once you get that claims form. All right, next question, how long do I have to spend the money? So funds must be spent based on the time frame within the grant agreement, which was 1 year. And again, based on what was in both grant agreements, they were a little different if you were part of round 1 or if you're part of round 2. For round 1 awardees, the time frame is February the 1st, 2024 through January the 31st of 2025. Right, so the thing that you're probably seeing there is that date is behind us. But again, what this is doing, it's allowing you, if you had spent any funds or had any costs incurred to, as you've been working on these proposals, you will be able to go back to February the 1st or March the 1st if you're part of round 2. But again, we are waiting for these grant agreements to be fully executed before you have that quote unquote permission to be able to spend the money. But you will be able to backdate anything that you did have to expend. All right, and then you just notice that date, month different for round 2. All right, next question, what are the reporting requirements and process? As noted earlier, quarterly reporting will be required, and it'll take place within the grant portal where you all completed the application. Once the reporting is available and you're expected to take action, you will receive a notification. When it's ready for you to get in there, you'll see the grant reporting option, and you'll be able to submit essentially the total amount that you have essentially spent within that 3-month time frame. So it's really simple reporting here, but we will give you information on what to expect and how to get that done. All right, last of the FAQs. What are the minimum regulatory requirements that I must meet to receive the employer-sponsored fund? So here's a brief statement here, and again, this is where we're diving into next. So any new child care program created or expanded through the employer-sponsored fund must become regulated by the state and also meet the provider eligibility standards for CCDF. Additional standards may apply based on the overall plan for regulation because there's a lot of different nuances across our regulatory requirements. In the chat, we'll go ahead and add the link to the provider eligibility standards that Wendy will be talking about here. There's also a QR code that you can scan. It'll take you to the provider eligibility standards for CCDF currently. And then last up, what happens if we are not able to become regulated within the time frame for the grant funds to be spent? So this is a really good question and something to important as you're thinking through the requirements. This will be kind of where you can essentially say we're unable to move forward with this opportunity. And so if you do determine this, what you will want to do is not sign the grant agreement once it gets to your signer on your side of the proposal. And then we'd also want you to send a notification once this has been determined to the OECOSL director at fssa.in.gov email. And that'll just let us know that you do not intend to move forward, but we do hope that you get all the support and all the answers to your questions over the next several weeks for you to make an informed decision here. All right. Oh, with that, I want to hand it over to Wendy Tolliver, who is a senior project manager with our licensing team to take us through the on-site, near-site child care regulatory requirements.
Good afternoon. Okay, so as Kim said, we're going to talk about the regulatory requirements. So all grantees are going to need to work with the state to become minimally regulated at the provider eligibility standards. So I know a lot of you, after reviewing applications, are maybe operating exempt. You would need to work with us to become an LLEP provider or licensed, just depending on your situation. You're going to operate under an exemption if you are an LLEP provider, and you're going to choose one exemption only. On the next slide, we're going to talk a little bit about the most common exemptions that I saw that would come up for you guys. And then also part of the regulatory requirements is state fire marshal approval. So we need state fire marshal approval for any childcare location. A lot of the programs that have applied, again, are schools. And yes, you have state fire marshal approval for the children that are there now. But the biggest consideration is age, because children under 30 months require a different approval than children over 30 months. There we go. Okay, so the provider eligibility standards, any new child care program created or expanded through the employer sponsor fund is going to need to be regulated to meet these standards. These are the minimum requirements for a program to receive CCDF, and those are in the link on the side. And then relevant exemptions. So if you should decide that you want to operate exempt and become a legally licensed exempt provider, which I'm assuming most of our school-based programs would want to do, you're probably going to operate under one of these three exemptions. And so at this point in time, there's 13. We have a 14th that will be coming into law as of July of this year. But these are our most common in schools. So the first one being you have a child care program for children who are going to be 3 as of December 1st of a certain school year. The second is you are opening a child care program in the school that's providing child care on premises for children of students and employees only. So that there needs to be consideration in this if you're wanting to open this up to the public as well as students and employees. And then exemption 13, for those programs especially that already have maybe exemption 2, you already have that preschool program, but through this employer sponsor grant, you now have an opportunity to open a childcare for employees. Then you would fall under that exemption 13 because you're essentially doing 9 as well as number 2. So I see those as the most common exemptions, but you are going to want to reach out to your regional manager and try to come up with the best plan for your program if you're feeling unsure. So regarding the state fire marshal visit and approval, any location that is in a non-residential building is going to require state fire marshal approval beforehand to have children on site as childcare. And we're going to need a special approval for children under 30 months because they are considered unable to evacuate a building on their own. So our list of proposed sites have already been sent to the state fire marshal. I've already reviewed them and kind of given them a heads up of what I see they need to check for. And the state fire marshal is going to come out and do that initial review with you. They're going to share with you their report when they leave, and they're also going to send that to us as well to discuss moving forward for your program.
Thanks, Wendy.
Okay.
We'll pause there since there was a lot of information. I know the regulatory requirement piece has been the hottest question, and see what questions folks have. I see a question in the chat. Can we see what they're looking for when they visit? I'm guessing this is referencing the state fire marshal.
Yes. So unfortunately, it's not the most transparent information. I'm going to find their page on FSSA in here, and you can go in there and kind of dig around a little bit. But honestly, what we're really trying to do is have them come out and have an open conversation. If they're looking for something that they're not seeing, they may ask if you know, do you have another room that we could do? Is there another way to work around this situation? And that's one of the reasons that we did ask those preliminary questions about sprinkler systems and things of that nature, because those are some of their initial questions. But yeah, let me find the page and I will throw it in the link as well. Okay. Okay, I see a question here from Nicole. If our center is already fully licensed, birth to 5, are there exemptions that we would need to use? No, if you're a licensed center location, you do not have to use an exemption. If we have an existing program, is it applicable that the child care would take place in a different building? Or must they exist in the same building? So if the childcare is taking place in a different building, then it's going to be under a different license number or exemption number. We can't have two programs with the same regulation number. So it's possible. but they just won't have that same number.
Thank you, Wendy. Anything else? Thanks for that additional link too in the chat, Wendy. We'll make sure we send that out to the group as well. All right, well, we keep moving. Want to go into the different support pathways that are available to you. But if you have any additional questions, please keep adding those to the chat and we will circle back. All right, so moving forward, in terms of any general question around your grant agreement, your budget, when am I going to get my executed grant agreement, all of those things, please continue to send those over to the OECOSL director at fssa.in.gov. Folks continue to use that. Please continue to do so. We'll try to get back with you within 1 to 2 business days when you do reach out to that. So always just let us know what you're wondering and how we can help. We also want to lift up our CCR&Rs, and we'll talk about the different ways that they can support here in the next couple of slides. They're fantastic resources in your local community. They're able to provide your team, your employees with consumer education and referrals to child care providers. They also can support you with assessing and doing some surveys of your workforce. And they also are wonderful conduits to get connected to the different levels of support that we have throughout the OECOSL ecosystem. And then, of course, regulatory support. We'll be able to tell you how to get in contact with your licensing regional manager by county, and they will be a wonderful regulatory support moving forward for you after today. So first up for the CCR&R system. So again, in the chat, we'll add this link here so you can locate your local child care resource and referral agency based on the county that you are in. You can also use the QR code on the screen to get to that link as well. As I mentioned, they're going to be able to support you with a variety of different topics. They can also make sure that you get connected, whether or not you have a regulatory support question, or if you need some coaching and technical assistance, if you're looking for some resources in a certain topic, they'll be able to connect you within the system for how you can best get there and get that support. So whatever you need, just lift it up to your CCR&Rs. If you don't know where to go, they'll help you figure that out. And as I mentioned, they also can help you understand kind of what is the local supply of childcare within your area. If your employees are struggling with finding care outside of what you're able to offer within the location that you're working on, they can always help you make referrals to different childcare providers. They can also help employers surveying your employees in your workforce. You want to better understand their needs and options as you kind of think about continuing to make sure you're providing responsive, family-friendly policies. Again, they have a survey bank that can help you really think about what do you want to better understand and how you can ask that question via a survey to your whole population. And then, as I mentioned, they also are wonderful support resources in terms of providing consumer education, what to look for in terms of looking for quality childcare, and they can also provide referrals to providers within the community. So make sure you reach out to your CCR&R. I know a lot of you already have connections and relationships with them, and they'll just be a wonderful support for you moving forward with this grant, but also things outside of this grant as well. In terms of the regulatory support, CCR&Rs again can connect you to who this person is. You can also use the link here that Wendy will put in the chat. You can also get to the link using this QR code on your screen. But we want you to be able to locate and reach out to your OECOSL regional manager. They are the ones that can be a wonderful resource for you as you're thinking through all the different questions around your facilities, the requirements that Wendy talked through with the provider eligibility standards and the exemptions. You have a regional manager based on the county that you are located in, and they can be helpful through the regulatory exemption process moving forward. All right, so eager to pause again, see what additional questions folks have. Feel free to put those in the chat. We'll just pause for a few minutes and see if anybody else has anything else before we wrap up the webinar today. All right. I'm not seeing anything else in the chat. You all know where to reach out to if you have any questions. The general question, or you don't know where to go, again, OECOSL Director is a really good contact resource for you. But again, hopefully you've got a lot of information today that provides you with guidance on what to expect moving forward. So following the webinar today, we will respond and share the recording of the session and also a copy of the PowerPoint slides, so you have them along with the link. Remember, OECOSL Director is there to support you with any questions, concerns that you have. A representative from your local child care resource and referral will be reaching out. They may already have been in contact with you. If not, they will be reaching out to the contacts that we have on record for you. Again, connecting with your regional manager will be really helpful if you're uncertain or have any specific detailed question about the regulatory requirement. Keep in mind the state fire marshal visits. If you have any questions, always reach out to OECOSL. We can support you in that. And then also we expect for March through April to be what we're calling the awardee contracting phase. So again, as you have questions about, what to expect next, where are things at, feel free to reach out. But as I mentioned earlier, we do expect the process to take several more weeks as our grant agreements are working through the various levels of approval within the state, which just takes a little bit of time. So thank you for your patience with that. We appreciate your guys showing up today. And so let us know if you have any additional questions. We'll hang on here for just a couple more minutes. Afterwards, you know how to get a hold of us if you need anything. So thank you. Thank you, Jason, for that feedback. Yeah. All right, well, I'm not seeing anything else. So we'll conclude the webinar today. So we thank you for your time. Thank you for your commitment to providing care in your area. And I hope everyone has a great rest of your afternoon and a great week. Thanks so much.